Welcome back. So last lesson we actually ended with an exception. Let's just fix that exception before we continue. So it's a nullable object must have a value. So the problem is probably if you go into the find all in the video repository, somewhere in line 39-ish, there's a problem. So let's jump into the code, find line 39-ish, and that's actually where this starts, this huge call I have right here. We're going to split that up later, but right now let's just have a look at it. What's the problem? Well, the problem is actually when you go down that this entity does not have a genre right now. So the video does not have a relation. So even though we join these two, it will be null, this field right here. And when you say null.id, you'll get a null reference exception. So how do we guard ourselves? We need to make a guard right here that says entity.genreID must be above 0. That's at least one guard I need to make here to say, I don't even want to try and get the actual genre entity from the system unless I know that the genre ID is above 0. Because if it's 0, it's probably because there's no genre related to this video right here. If that is the case, I will go and I'll create the genre like we did before. If that is not the case, I'll actually send a null instead and say, instead of setting this to a genre, I'll set it to null and just ignore this information right here. Let's try and restart the system and see if that fixed our bug right here to kind of solve this issue. Now we could guard ourselves in different ways because we might have a genre ID above 0 with a genre that doesn't exist in the database, but that would be a completely different error because if that's the case, we have an invalid database because the genre, if it has an ID on the video, the genre should exist in the database, else we didn't clean up the database properly. So we have a completely different error right there if that is the case. Let's try and go back and just refresh the page right here. We'll go in and we'll just delete genre with the ID of 1 and see if we can now actually get the video even though there's no genre with that ID. There we go, it's deleted. Let's go down to the videos and just get all videos and see if we can now succeed and actually get the videos back. And notice now the genre ID is actually, the genre itself is actually null instead of throwing an exception right here. So actually that's it. I'm going to wrap up this series right here. I'm going to instead make a new series where we're going to make this more into a domain or feature-driven setup where we're going to do unit testing, test-driven development, everything that we can do to protect ourselves. And then we are going to have a board so we can see individual features that we want to build and then just create each of these features in a single video series. So we're going to end it right here. This was just an introduction to most of the things you need to know about the clean architecture and about how to run with a backend like this. Next lesson we're going to make a full-featured application where we're going to start from creating a UI, a front end, creating a backend, creating a database, and making a single feature at a time. So I hope to see you in that series and have fun and see you next time. Bye.